You're tuned to the Steve Donoghue Show on CPL Radio, your one-stop daily source for Steve's take on the world of books. And now your host, the book critic who literally reads everything, Steve Donoghue.
Greetings, fellow patrons of the Cedarburg Public Library, and welcome back to the Steve Donoghue Show, where we talk about bookish news, views, and reviews with steely resolve. This episode comes to you in the very earliest days of September, with Labor Day right around the corner, and coming not far behind that, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, a long, bleak stretch of winter, when the nights begin around 3 in the afternoon, no amount of central heating can keep evil drafts from curling around the feet of furniture, and, at least so reading myth and publishing strategy have it, people naturally turn from tackling a fundamentally different kind of book than the ones they've read all summer long. The myth is that summer is for light fare, beach reads, international thrillers starring heroes named Link or Bullet, maybe with an occasional juicy political tell-all thrown in, whereas autumn and winter are far more, quote, serious reading seasons. Summer, James Patterson. Winter, George Patton. I don't believe this mythology, of course, and I don't think I ever have. The mythology of seasonal-driven reading habits evaporates upon contact with actual readers, whose interests, passions, and whims sprawl all over creation and pay very little heed to the particular subject matter involved. Publishing strategy is a bit of a different story. People tend to spend less time cavorting around outside when it's freezing cold in the long stretches of winter. People tend to devote more time to reading when they're not distracted by trivial things like sunlight or conviviality or physical comfort. Hence, bigger and more serious books tend to start appearing as the autumn breaks on the horizon. And that brings us to our episode today. I thought it might be useful to do a quick tour of some of those quote-unquote serious books that are scheduled for release right about now. In fact, on the 1st of September. We can keep this conversation going week by week as the months progress, but this handful will do for a start. And we'll begin with the Oxford Illustrated History of the Book, a big, wonderfully illustrated volume edited by James Raven and featuring 24 essays by experts on all periods and aspects of the history of the world's greatest invention. Raven stresses that his book is really an account of the long history of books changing and morphing to meet their times. And this book's chapters reflect that. There are essays on books in the ancient world, books in the medieval era, both East and West, books in the Islamic world, and a requisite but thoroughly good chapter on books in their bewildering modern iterations, audiobooks, ebooks, that sort of thing. Books like this one, Potted Histories of the Book as a Device and an Institution, aren't exactly thin on the ground, but even so, the Oxford Illustrated History of the Book stands out. Another item that's slated literally for the 1st of September, although there's no guaranteeing when the overworked and underinsured employees at your local bookstore will actually have the time to unpack it, receive it, and put it out for display. So don't hold them or me to a September 1st date. Is the latest volume in the legendary Library of America series of books. These are great reprint volumes. They have built-in cloth bookmark, bright acid-free pages, sewn binding, and an absolutely first-rate editorial vision, usually. That vision is on prominent display in this latest volume, which is called The Western, and which features 4 classic Old West novels from the 1940s and 1950s. There's The Oxbow Incident by Walter Clark, there's Shane by Jack Schaefer, there's The Searchers by Alan LeMay, and, delightfully, there's Warlock by Oakley Hall. 4 superb choices, 4 illustratively different examples of the genre. These Library of America volumes are a bit on the pricey side. This one is $40. But almost all of them are very much worth the outlay, and this one is no exception. Fans of the Western, and I myself am one, will be hoping for a companion volume covering the 1960s and the 1970s. One of the staples of that autumn publishing strategy that we mentioned is the full dress biography. And one of those likewise scheduled for the very 1st of September is Black Spartacus by Sudhir Hazarisingh. It's a big, bustling new life of Haitian revolutionary Toussaint Louverture, who's fleshed out here with more sympathy and more insight than any previous biography has managed to bring to the subject. The author is a prize-winning historian, and in this book he's written his masterpiece, in my opinion. And the last book we'll mention for today is King of the World by Philip Mansell, a fantastically rich and detailed new biography of King Louis XIV, a grand and immensely readable, definitive new English language biography of the so-called Sun King, who ruled for 72 years, far, far longer than the normal lifespans of his subjects. King Louis has had a small mountain of biographies written about him, but even so, Mansell's distinguishes itself for how unabashedly inviting it is. Even readers who've read a large number of those earlier biographies will find plenty to delight them here. And there you go, my fellow patrons. 4 books actually slated for release on the 1st of September, the first droplets of a vast torrent headed to the bookstore shelves this month. We'll be taking that torrent as it comes. But in the meantime, these 4 titles are a marvelously promising beginning to the so-called serious reading season, so I thought they were worth bringing to your attention. That'll conclude today's episode of the Steve Donoghue Show, and we'll reconvene tomorrow.
The Steve Donoghue Show is a production of CPL Radio, a service of the Cedarburg Public Library located in Cedarburg, Wisconsin.